Okay, let's get into something a little bit more positive and let's talk about attraction. Attraction is not necessarily talking about dating or romantic partners. Any relationship in which we get to choose our partner is going to be governed by the laws of attraction. So yes, romance, but also friends that we select. If we're making hiring decisions, the laws of attraction rule that too. So these are, what I'm going to talk about next really applies to a lot of different areas of our lives. Okay, so proximity or exposure and its role in attraction. Research has shown time and again something called the mere exposure effect. Just by being around somebody, we tend to become more attracted to them. Like if you first initially met them and you thought they were, I don't really like that person, having to be around them, maybe you ride the same bus to work or you work in a cubicle next to each other, something like that, we tend to grow on each other and they'll suddenly start to seem more attractive. Just seeing someone's face and name makes those things more likable to us. Just seeing them every time, seeing their face and name together makes us warm up to them as a person faster. I had a coworker when I was working my way through my master's degree who, she didn't like me, I didn't particularly care for her, but we had to share a cubicle. And we were stuck in this cubicle for 4 hours a day. I only worked a 4-hour shift. She had an 8-hour shift. And I worked 4 hours next to her, like our desk was 6 feet long, maybe. And we both had typewriters. It was the old days. And we sat next to each other and mostly didn't talk. We had nothing to say to each other. But what's funny is over the course of the 3 years that I worked there, we really warmed up to each other. Next thing you know, when it was time for me to leave for my PhD program, she threw a going away party for me, and we were really sad to see each other. You know, we weren't going to be seeing each other anymore. We had really grown on each other, and just by being around each other, we developed a liking, and that's really super important. Here's an interesting one for us with all of our selfies and photographs and stuff like that. You know, we see ourselves in the mirror, and so we see ourselves in the mirror image, so our right eye is directly across from what should be our left eye if it was a picture, right? So when you see a picture of yourself, it oftentimes looks wrong, you know, because our faces aren't symmetrical. And so seeing it in a photograph, we're like, is this what I look like? I look so much better in the bathroom mirror. Well, the reason why we look better in the bathroom mirror is because that's what we've seen every day. That's what we're used to seeing. And the reason why we don't look weird to our friends when they see a photograph of us is because that's how they see us all the time. So when you show them your selfie, you're like, God, I look weird in this picture. No, you look normal. We look weird to ourselves because we're used to seeing our mirror image. Mirror exposure, so we prefer the mirror image. Okay, let's get to the most important thing in determining whether we will want to get into a relationship with somebody else or not. And this sounds so shallow to say it, but please bear with me. Physical attractiveness. It's one of the first categorizations we can do, talking about prejudice like I did a little while ago. We, first thing, judge each other and place each other into categories. Attractive, not attractive, right? Now, people who are rated as physically attractive are more often the objects of emotional attraction as well as physical attraction. So people who are physically attractive are oftentimes the ones that other people like and other people want to be friends with and spend time with. Physically attractive people tend to benefit from the halo effect. Other people perceive them as happy, as successful, as intelligent, as having social skills. They did a study where they had this actress go read a book to kindergartners, dressed as herself, looking like her normal attractive self, and then they made her up to be unattractive. You know, made her frumpy, you know, with her clothing. They made her hair look bad and put makeup on her to make her face look, you know, like she had circles in her eyes and all sorts of stuff. So same exact person inside, but now looks uglier. And they sent her back to those exact same kids, told her, gave them a different, when she was attractive they called her, you know, Mrs. Smith, and when she was unattractive they called her Mrs. Jones. And Mrs. Jones read a book to the kids also. And then they asked the kids, who did you like better? Who was a better reader? I think they asked them one more question. Can't remember what it was. Well, attractive person got higher ratings on likability and on reading skill. Okay, I'll give you likability. Okay, maybe I snap judged, but I mean, seriously, you thought the first person read better? It's the same person. We assume good things about attractive people. Even when we're little, that's, I think, the most shocking part. Those were 5-year-olds who already knew that attractive people should be judged more favorably. In reality, compared to average-looking people, attractive people are no happier than unattractive or average-looking people. They don't have any higher self-esteem. You know, a lot of times people think, well, if I just was more physically attractive, I would feel better about myself. But what they find in research is that people who have absolutely nothing to be insecure about physically have no more confidence, no higher self-esteem than people who are average or below in looks. So who is rated as physically attractive? Who do we think is physically attractive? So we've got some people sort of funneling through here. Let me make it go one more time. And if you look at each of them, they're all women. And if you look at each of them, they're considered attractive within their culture. And what we find is that there are standards of beauty within each culture. There are certain things that cultures value as, you know, hallmarks of attractiveness. But there are a lot of cross-cultural consistencies, and you might have noticed them as you saw those faces funneling past. For one thing, men find youthful-looking women, and women who look like they might still be fertile, they tend to find them more attractive than women who are older and are probably less fertile. You know, it kind of goes along with you know, what I kind of warned you of, that it seems like we might be talking about romantic relationships when we talk about attraction, but the same principles underlie our attractions for all purposes. And so men think women who look young and fertile are more attractive than women who don't look like that. When judging men, women tend to prefer kind of the reverse. Women prefer men who look more mature, who look more masculine, and who are able to display evidence of affluence. So again, kind of using things that might be beneficial for reproduction. You know, she might want a more mature, masculine, affluent man because as a dad, he'd be able to protect his offspring and care for his offspring better. That has nothing to do with hiring decisions. That has nothing to do with, you know, becoming friends with somebody. But these are the kinds of things that drive all of our interpersonal choices. Both sexes prefer facial symmetry and averageness. The 3 women that went by, one of the things that all of them have in common is facial symmetry. Their faces are balanced. Now, everybody has some asymmetry. Nobody's perfect. But you could see that their eyes, the proportion of their eyes to their lower face, were very consistent. All of the women had very consistent faces, even though different cultures had different styles. What made those women beautiful is the same across all of them, and that is that basically symmetry shows us health, and that's what they all had in common, is health. Things that make people seem more attractive is being nice. And then, of course, people who we already love, like our family members and stuff like that, look more attractive to us than they do necessarily to, you know, strangers who don't know, you know, how lovable this person is or whatever. So if we know that they're nice, they seem more attractive. And if we already love them, then they seem more attractive. Okay, now you've probably heard the old adage that opposites attract. And you've probably heard it's ancillary. Birds of a feather flock together. Right? So which is it? Are we attracted to people who are like us or people who are unlike us? Well, let's see. Evidence suggests that birds of a feather flock together. We tend to like people who share our features. We do like people who kind of look like us. That's kind of almost counter-incestuous laws kinds of thing. But I mean, we like people who are similar to us physically. So we like people who are roughly our same age. We like people who have a lot of the same kinds of like characteristics that we have. height, weight, whatever, we tend to be attracted to people who are like us physically. We also are attracted to people who are like us values-wise. So we become friends with people who share our basic value for things like education or the importance of religion in your life or political viewpoints, things like that. We tend to prefer people, we find attractive people who share our basic values. So attitudes, beliefs, humor, interests, intelligence, age, income, all of those things are characteristics that have been measured and have been found to match in people who are in long-term friendships or long-term romantic relationships. People tend to match on these things. Now, do they match on all of them? No. I mean, more than likely there's something that you and your best friend do not match on in this list. There's probably at least one. But there are probably more things that you and your best friend match on than you don't match. And that's the key thing with long-term friendships and long-term romantic relationships. People tend to match more than not match. And then, as 8th grade as it sounds, when we find out that somebody else likes us, they suddenly become more interesting. And so knowing that somebody else likes us enables us to express the fact that we like them. And so sharing feelings towards each other, I guess, is one of those examples of having something in common, right? So a lot of times you're like, find out if he likes me. He does? Okay, I like him too. We like to know that we share those things. All right, well, let's go ahead and stop here, and we'll finish up this chapter with a little discussion on altruism in the next segment.